Hello, this is the infant feeding team in a slightly different venue, and I'm on my own. Welcome to the 26th session that we've done, and it'd be nice to see some people coming up just to let me know that you can hear me. I'm self-isolating, so I've left Naomi coping with everything on the wards, and I'm here doing the infant feeding session on my own today from home, improvising. I didn't have everything I needed that I would normally have with me, so but hopefully I can still answer the questions that come up, and hopefully in a week or two Naomi and I'll be reunited and we'll be able to do it together again. So it's a normal infant feeding session. I'm here to answer any questions you've got for me. I'm Alex. I'm one of the joint infant feeding leads. There's me and Hannah, who are the leads, and our other team members are Naomi, who's normally my sidekick on this, and Sarah and Eliza. So welcome to the names, the faces I can see popping up on the screen. Lovely to see you. And I shall be answering any questions you've got for me. This is the second session I've done today from home. I did a session first thing this morning with the new student midwives, so the first years that have just come in, and their learning, I think as they call it, is now blended learning. So I did a presentation to them this morning about infant feeding and what our team does and what they would expect from us, and how they can interact with us to get support for you in you in the community and in the hospital for help. So it's my second online session today, which is quite interesting, and it was interesting to think about what I needed to, I thought it would be worth talking about what we talk about with them. So I was asked to come up with 3 things that I thought were really important, and I decided that they were that support is absolutely crucial, that the support that you get when you're having your babies makes such a big difference to how you get on with feeding, and that the idea is that our staff are really, really well trained and can be there to give you that individual support on the wards or in the community, depending on where you're having your baby, answer your questions in the antenatal phase, and fill you with confidence that you're going to be able to do it. That breastfeeding is important, that it does have an impact on mothers and babies' health going forward. And we talked about that, as a group, and talked about how they're going to be supporting them, and how these new student midwives are going to have the skills to be there to give you all the help in those initial days. Lovely, I can see a thumbs up coming up, so that hopefully means that you can hear me. And I'm going to find out my laptop so I can see your questions. I'm hoping that's going to come up. So it hasn't come up as yet. So usually it just loads. So let's just see if I can find it. Go to home on that one. So bear with me. So hopefully it will load now in a moment and start coming up that we're alive, and then I can see it. Let's just see. That usually helps with the questions coming up. It's easier to answer them on from my laptop than on here, because I can control when they come through and I don't miss any. So have a think about any questions you might have for me today, and I'll do my best to answer them, and if we can't, we'll get back to you with the answers going forward. We've covered numerous topics over these 26 weeks. We counted them up the other day. I couldn't believe we'd done 26 already. We've covered all sorts of things like hand expressing, whether to do it before you've had your baby, or whether that's something you need to do or you don't need to do. We've talked about the importance of positioning and attachment. We've talked about responsiveness and relationship building, which are so crucial, which you can start in the antenatal phase. So actually thinking about getting that relationship going with your baby. And I know to every mother it's different as to when or every woman it's different as to when she feels like she becomes a mother. But it's being aware of that baby moving, beginning that bond, getting other people to be aware, like your partner or siblings for your baby, so that you're beginning to build that bond with your baby and being aware of this individual that's growing inside you. And that when they're born, they get used to your voice. They've been hearing it for many weeks, that they know it and that they're aware of it, and that can be really soothing. Playing pieces of music and things can be really helpful as well. So there's all these different things that are really, really beneficial. So I can see we've already got a question come through, and just a reminder, as we do every session on these ones, this is infant feeding, and I can see that's an infant feeding question, but this is an infant feeding session, and if you have questions that are not specific to infant feeding, then there usually are other opportunities to bring them up in other sessions, because although we are midwives, the team, me and my team, we are midwives, we don't always have the most up-to-date information on what's going on in other parts of the hospital. But I'm going to go to Aggia's question because it's already come up already, and it is a feeding one. Can I talk a bit about colostrum harvesting? How and when mothers for the first time should do it, and what's the best way to go about it? Well, first off is to say we would only be suggesting that you're doing it if there's a reason for it. So don't feel you have to do it. So women who maybe are living with diabetes, they would be definitely well worth them doing it. Women who've had problems previously with lactation, so if they've had a problem time with feeding in the past, then it's actually quite a good thing to do it for them too. It's perhaps you may want to do it because you want to learn the skill and don't necessarily need to collect too much. But there are all sorts of reasons that people might do it. But don't feel obliged if you've got no risk factors or no reason specifically to do it. You could just have a try and see if it works for you and don't worry any more about it. But if you do want to do it, then you can have a start sort of feeling around your breasts in the 36 weeks period of time, and actually start collecting from 37. Now this is where I knew I had to improvise, because I realised I haven't got anything at home anymore. I used to, that I could use as a breast. So I just put it around my house, and I've got an orange. So bear with me, and I've stuck a pin in it. So that's the nipple. So thinking about colostrum harvesting, it's partly getting to know your breast, which is a really good thing to do before you have your baby. It's thinking about your breast and thinking about it that it's made up in lobes going back from the nipple, and that it might feel a bit lumpy. Many women can feel it lumpy. So initially you've just got branches going back. And I'd say actually a piece of broccoli would be better. If you imagine the nipple as the stalk, and then branches going back, and then you get the florets of the broccoli. What you're looking for is to find those florets of broccoli. So being tactile with the breast when you first start, maybe doing a bit of massage, being aware of what you can feel. So just being massaging the breast. And then when you've done a bit of that, thought about your baby, try to get oxytocin flowing, working back from the base of the nipple. So you go back and you feel for where you can feel more resistance. So that's the equivalent of the florets on the broccoli. So you're thinking about it as that's where you want to put your fingers. That's where you're going to anchor your finger and thumb. And most women will do it in the 12 and 6 position. So there. So they're making a C. You can see. I'm going to turn the camera slightly. It's a bit tipped. So you're going to make a C, and you're going to put it on the breast. Find the right place for you, working back from the base of the nipple. Find where you can feel it's lumpy and bumpy onto your fingers. Anchor your fingers onto the breast. Bring your fingers in and squeeze. Now this is where an orange doesn't work, because obviously I'm not getting very much purchase, but it's in and hold, 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 release. Go again. Don't move your fingers. Just release the pressure. Release. In again, keep the hold. And the first few times you do it, you may not see anything. Others might be rewarded straight away. But what you will start is little droplets beginning to come when it does come. And they build up and build up and build up until you can collect it. But initially with colostrum, it's thick and gloopy. I know we've said this every time on these sessions. It's thick and gloopy. It takes time to collect, and then you can collect it. And we usually would have a syringe or something, or a little pot or a teaspoon, anything clean that you can collect it in, and then you can store it. If you're going to be storing it because you're going to bring it in to, because you're having a baby, then actually we would suggest that you mark it up. You collect during the day. You can collect into the same syringe over a period of the day, and then it could go into the freezer. Mark it up, put the date you've done it on, so you could use the same syringe throughout the day, and then pop it in the freezer. And then when you bring it in, please only bring in a small amount. This is a plea from us. It's from the delivery suite, from the induction room, suite as well, because people are bringing in lots and lots of colostrum. We haven't got the storage for it. Just bring in 1 or 2. Don't bring lots in, and then hopefully your partners can bring more in if you need it. And if you don't need it, it's there ready waiting for you when you get home. So thinking about going quickly whipping through what I've just said about it. So thinking about maybe having a little go at 36 weeks, but not really collecting until 37, because we don't want babies born a bit early. And there is a very, very small risk that it could put you into labour. So at 37 weeks, you could be doing it 4 or so times a day, collecting it into the same syringe or same container. storing it in your freezer and only bringing a little bit in when you come in. So do not come in with lots and lots and lots of it when you've had your babies, because unfortunately we just don't have the storage space for it. And we have had some really sad instances where it has defrosted and we've not been able to use it because it has to be used within 12 hours of defrosting. So if you're coming in for an induction, then we would be saying don't bring it in straight away. Maybe when your partner comes in, they could bring it in then. Olivia's put how. In what respect how? Perhaps you could fill out that a little bit more and let me know what you mean by how, lovey. Oh, that would be really good. And it's still not come up on my computer, so I'm relying on the screen here at the moment. So I'm not sure why it's not working, but we'll see. Hopefully I can just do the questions on the screen instead today. And I see there are 20 of you on there. Any other questions for me? So that was, hopefully I've answered Agia's question about that. Oh, how much colostrum does a newborn need? Fabulous, great question. Right, these things I do have, because my background is actually as an NCT breastfeeding counsellor. So I used to go and teach antenatal classes. So actually I have quite a few props of my own, but my breasts that I used to have is at work. I took it into work because we use them. So that leads us on then to Olivia to stomach sizes. So I can see you're saying about the syringes. I'll come back to that. So when a baby's born, they have a tiny weeny tummy, absolutely minuscule. This is the size of a baby's tummy. Colostrum is a food in concentrate, so they really, really don't need much. So that's day 0. This is day 3. You can see it's getting bigger, and this is about a week. You can see how much that's changed. And a milk supply, as long as it's established and you're asking for it, will do the same. It will go up radically and you will have enough for your baby. So how much a baby needs at each feed is certainly in the colostrum phase. We might be very happy if you're getting 0.2, 0.3 of a mil of colostrum in the first 24 hours, as long as you're giving it a few times over that period of time. But ideally your baby's at the breast, so you won't necessarily know what your baby's getting, and a baby's always going to do a better job than you will at removing the milk. So thinking about how much, tiny amounts, as you can see. The syringes that we use on the wards are 1 mil syringes if you're looking at syringes on the line. So they're 1 mil enteral, E-N-T-E-R-A, which means they're for food, enteral syringes. So they're little 1 mil syringes, and they're the ones that we have. And if you have access, if you're coming into hospital at all, you could always ask for a few from us and we can get them to you. That's my marbles running across the table there. So I'm glad you found that helpful, Agia. So it's thinking about these. All these things are interlinked. So hand expressing leads us on to stomach sizes, and remembering that the amount a baby needs is only very small in those first 24 hours, and then it's going to go up radically. And what you'll find is if you are expressing, let's say you're expressing after you've had your babies born, you'll find the milk volumes that you're getting go up and up and up. And we know that milk will come in normally somewhere between days 3 and 5. So if you think about, this is the first day, and this, I'll put the bigger one down, this is day 3. So you can already see the volumes have gone up really, tremendously. And then as the milk comes in, the volumes increase tremendously even further, and we end up like this. So we're talking about, sort of 20 odd mils, and this could be up to 80 mils. So big volume changes, and your milk supply, as long as you're asking for it, will totally follow that and meet the baby's needs, as long as you're removing milk effectively from the breast. So keep thinking of more questions, because otherwise I have to fill in the gaps, and I haven't got Naomi to bounce off, which I'm missing tremendously. It's very different when you're on your own. It's all on you. So as I said, I was chatting to these new student midwives this morning, and their training has a lot to do with feeding. So if you're out and about and you've got a student and they're offering to help you, the majority of those students will be so fantastic at helping, because they've got such a good basis of breastfeeding. They have it throughout their course. It starts, right from when they walk in the door, i.e. I met a whole load today and they're only a few weeks into their course. Met virtually. But actually they're getting continuous training on feeding support, and will have up-to-date information. Thank you, Charlotte, for your hello. You're one of our regulars. Nice to see you. So thinking about accessing support, you know, if there is a student midwife working, then do by all means ask them for help, because they will have the skills to help you, particularly if they're in their second or third year, because they will have done lots of breastfeeding support previous to that and will have up-to-date information. So if you know, if a student midwife is offering you help, don't feel that you're getting second best, because you're far from getting second best. They really are skilled. So part of our role in the infant feeding team is obviously supporting all of you out there and providing you with help and information, but it's training the staff as well. And we do continuous training with staff, and we're really lucky because we have a really engaged and you know, interested staff when it comes to feeding. They really are brilliant. Our maternity teams of midwives and maternity support workers and nurses we have as well now are all absolutely brilliant, really switched on when it comes to feeding. So we're very, very lucky, and you will be well supported when you come and have your babies with us if you haven't had them already. So any further questions from anybody? So just to let you know that we are running our breastfeeding clinics again now. We've just updated our website to say breastfeeding clinics are running 2 days a week at the John Radcliffe, and we'll be looking at opening them up further around the county going forward. Unfortunately, obviously with COVID, it's been really difficult. So right, Amy's put a question up. Let's see what she said. Sorry not to be antenatal yet. It's only 23 weeks. Oh, you still are. So sorry if this is a silly question. I'm sure it's not silly at all. And let's just get the whole of your question up there if we can. Just to be clear, collecting colostrum is not essential as we plan to breastfeed when baby arrives. Hopefully baby will take to the breast and get this feed then. Absolutely. There are certain women who we would recommend that they do hand express before they've had the babies, because for instance, if you're a mother with diabetes, then actually, you know, you've been trying to regulate your own insulin levels, and we're doing a really good job. Our women are brilliant at it, regulating insulin levels in the pregnancy, and when a baby's born they do spike, they go up and down with their glucose. So actually we sometimes need to give them a little bit more, and having a bit of colostrum ready to give that baby is really, really beneficial, because we don't want to give them formula, because there is a link with introducing formula early with babies who have a risk of diabetes, and it does increase their risk. So we would really recommend those mothers who have diabetes to be hand expressing in the antenatal period, so they've got some milk to give them. But if you're not envisaging any problems, Amy, we would not be recommending that you're having to hand express. You might just want to have a little go before you have your baby, so you know what you're doing. The reasons that we use hand expressing are to have a bit before the baby's born, or when the baby's born, to tempt them to feed. So it gives mother a really good understanding of how her breast works, why it's so important a baby gets a really big mouthful, because as I mentioned with my orange, the ductal system's right back here and not here, and so when a baby goes on the breast they need a really big mouthful. So that reinforces, that helps mums to understand how their breasts work. When your milk comes in at somewhere between days 3 and 5, what you might find is that you feel very full, and actually the baby's struggling to get on, even if breastfeeding's been going fine up to then, and being able to express a little bit off, it can be really helpful to make sure that the baby has a slightly softer breast to go on. If a mother's feeling like she's got a blocked duct, which sometimes happens, hand expressing is the best way of removing that blockage and getting the milk moving. You get really good response because it's tactile, it's your hands onto your breast, and the oxytocin's much better flow with that. So there are lots of reasons to be able to hand express, but you don't have to do it in the antenatal period unless you've got a particular risk factor, Amy. You're absolutely right. So we would expect you to be breastfeeding, and that would be fabulous. I can see Vicky's got a question up here. Vicky says that she's currently pregnant, hoping to breastfeed if all goes well. She would like to pump when established for 1 feed a day for her husband to do, holding off buying a pump until birth. But any advice? Let me just see the rest of it, so let me put part of it up. Any advice? Let me find where you've got to. We'd like to hear advice on when and how to introduce this. We would normally suggest that you establish your milk supply in the first instance. Get your milk supply going. Make sure that you've really established it, and then think about the pumping. So don't do it in the first week or so, unless you have to, unless you're having to push your milk supply. there are so many pumps out there. It's a bit one of those things that we're all different. We all get on with different pumps. There are cheap ones, there are really expensive ones, there are even hand ones, and I still have a hand pump. This is a little Isis, and they can work just for the odd feed. If you were having to pump to meet your baby's needs 8 times in 24 hours, you probably wouldn't want to use this. But for your use, once a day, this might work really well. And the key to these pumps is getting the rhythm going. So it's going quick, 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 quick to get milk flowing, and in and hold. Release, in and hold, and release. So thinking about that, we would say just get your milk supply established in the first instance, and Vicky, and then think about doing it. Many women like to do that. Probably the best time to pump would be first thing in the morning, when most women have much more milk than they need, and that's a really good time to get it going. But get feeding off to a good start, and then think about this. And you can be talking to community midwives once you've had your baby. They'll support you, and we can support you as well. So yes, I know that a lot of mums like to do that, and it works really well as well, and it can give you a little bit of a break as well. So, as I say, have a look. There are lots and lots of pumps out there. Amazon have loads that you can do comparisons on. There are some fantastic ones. Have a quick peek and see what was going to work for you. If it's just the odd pumping session, then a hand pump would be perfect. So moving on. Catherine has said, I just wanted to say a big thank you to yourself. As I met you last summer with my daughter, you diagnosed her with a high arch palate. Well, you poor darling, that's so hard, isn't it? Which caused some awful broken nipples. Thankfully, they healed after 6 weeks, and my daughter is now 16 months old, and we're still breastfeeding. Well done, you. Well done, you. Absolutely fantastic. And that, I think, highlights the fact that much as we can do an awful lot online, like we do nowadays, and we do our Attend Anywhere appointments for some of you, and I know Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support and Abingdon Baby Cafe and the Lecce are doing online supports as well. This is where we do need to meet people. So for someone like Catherine, if it's a persisting problem and it's not resolving and you've had lots of help, get in touch with us, because something like a high arch palate, we're not going to know until we literally put our finger in the baby's mouth. So it's really important to, to see if things are not getting better. If you've accessed loads of support and it's still not getting better, then actually contact us and get some help face to face with us, because something like a high arch palate, we really wouldn't know until we literally put our fingers in her mouth. But Catherine, well done, 16 months, absolutely fantastic. I'm so pleased for you. Congratulations, and lucky baby. Amy's come back and said thank you. Aggie's come back. Do pain medication that you take for wounds from a C-section or even normal delivery affect the baby? The one that we are worried about is codeine. We would prefer you to have as little codeine for as short a time as possible. That's because everybody's different when it comes to codeine. We all metabolise codeine at a different rate. So some women really, if you know that you're really affected by codeine, then it's something that we would be trying to avoid with you. But we know in the early days it's important to keep your pain relief up, because you're going to be much better able to get about and do all the normal things if you've got good pain relief. But codeine is probably the first one we'd be recommending that you try and reduce as quickly as possible. So in fact, what we now use in the hospital is hydrocodone, because it's thought to be slightly better than codeine. But what we would be aiming for you to come off is any opioids, so that you then can go on to just paracetamol and ibuprofen. But you do need to have sufficient pain relief in those first few days and then work your way off it. But yeah, so it's codeine is for as low a dose for as short as possible. It would be the recommendation. That's the only one that we're particularly concerned about. So I hope that answers your question, Agia. And I can see a few more coming through. Let me see what else we've got. Vicky said thank you. Harriet's come through that she's currently trying to use express milk only. Do I need to always pump in the milk into the milk supply until the milk supply stops? Seems to be taking a very long time to do this, and I'm worried it won't be sustainable. Oh, Harriet, that's really hard work if you're doing all the expressing. Is your baby not going to the breast at all? That is tough, because you're doing double the work, because you're pumping and having to feed the baby. So what we would normally be saying when it comes to pumping is that you pump while you see the milk coming. So massage, we talked about that with this, massage, thinking about getting that milk, that oxytocin flowing. Think about your baby, have your baby nearby, and then get your pump kits on, and hold your pump kits between your fingers so that you're holding them onto the breast like that. So you've got your fingers and the thumb round on the breast, and express while you can see milk coming. Get your fingers massaging as well while they're on the breast. Watch the flow, so you can see it coming down, can't you, here? And get your hands moving on the breast. Watch the flow. While the flow is coming, you pump. When the flow slows or stops, have a break, 30 seconds, then start again. And we would suggest you do that 2 or 3 times, because each time you're going to ask for a bit more milk. If you're using a single pump, we'd say do one side till it slows or stops, go to the other side till it slows or stops, go back to the first, go back to the second, go back to the first, go back to the second, aiming to do both breasts probably 3 times each session. But be guided by the flow. Don't sit there for too long. If you notice it's really slowing down, have that break. Go over to the other side, back to the first, back to the second, back to the first. Going backwards and forwards and getting your hands massaging and compressing the breast while you're doing it will have a really good impact. Thinking about your baby, having your baby nearby. So do that, have a break, and then come back to it later, aiming to do it 8 times in 24 hours. We will say we're mimicking babies, and that's what you're doing with the baby. Because when a baby is at the breast, a baby feeds and pauses and feeds and pauses. And so those pauses you're putting in are the same as a baby's pauses. And the result of that is that you're saying to the breast, I want a bit more milk now, which is what a baby does. When they start again, they get another letdown. So you're asking for another letdown, and then another letdown, and then another letdown. When a baby's doing this, they get rewarded all the way through. If you pump just once until it stops without having pauses and starting again, you've only pumped 1 letdown in each breast. So actually by doing this, you're asking for 2 and 3 letdowns, which is much more what babies do. And hopefully what you'll see, you'll get a bit more milk that way. And then hopefully you can, and certainly if you're double pumping, we would expect you're feeding for a shorter period of time, but get more milk off, because the breasts let milk down together. So one thing they do together. I hope that answers your question, Harriet. Come back if I haven't, if I've gone off at a tangent, which wouldn't be surprising for me. Marta has said she's 36 weeks and thinking about starting to collect colostrum and freeze it. What do you think about it? When would you recommend to start to do it, if so? From 37, you can have a little practice now, just see what's happening, but don't start collecting, don't do much now. Although it's not really, sort of definite. We just know that there is a tiny chance that it could induce labour. So we'd suggest that you wait till your term, so 37 weeks. Start thinking, doing it then. So have a little try, just see how you get on, and then start collecting from then. So 4 times in a 24-hour period we'd be suggesting, and collect it in, freeze it, and please, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, don't bring it all in. Just bring in as little as possible. And if you're coming in for an induction, don't bring it in at all at that point in time. Get your partner to bring it in when they come in a cool box with ice blocks, because we really don't have the storage for it. And what's happening is it gets defrosted, and we can't use it because it can only be used within 12 hours of defrosting. So Marta, I hope that answers your question. So 37 weeks onwards. Rachel's come on. She's apologising. I may have covered it already, but we'll see. Yes, you can freeze express breast milk. She's asked if you can in bottles. In fact, that's exactly what we do in the milk bank. All the milk in the milk bank is in bottles. And you would just take it out and leave it to defrost at room temperature or in the fridge. If you're desperate for it, you need it very quickly, you could stand it in a jug of warm water. So that, there are different ways of doing it. We're using expressed breast milk, we need to use it within 12 hours though, once defrosted, because breast milk is fantastic. It's full of all these protective properties, these things that nobody can put in any other milk. But what we do is we lose a little bit of it when it's frozen. So whereas you can keep your milk for 5 days in the fridge, once defrosted, we suggest only 12 hours and then use it within 12 hours or discard it. If it's donated breast milk, and if you're in the hospital and you're using some donated breast milk, because it's been pasteurised, then actually it's 24 hours. I know that's confusing, but assume if you think it's not been pasteurised, then if you know that it's your own milk, not pasteurised, 12 hours would be the maximum you could keep it. So yes, you can freeze it in bottles. That'd be absolutely fine. I can see more questions coming. Caris has said, my baby's almost 3 weeks old, and on day 3, when my milk came in, I got mastitis and was put on antibiotics. I recovered well. How can I avoid getting mastitis again? Thank you. Milk, it's keeping your breasts comfortable, Caris, being really aware of your breasts. If you start feeling it backing up, you can see redness coming, you're thinking, oh, I'm feeling a bit full, take off enough to make yourself comfortable. If you've got enough milk, your baby's now 3 weeks old, the likelihood is you've got an established milk supply now. If you've got enough milk for your baby, you're not wanting to push your supply at this stage. So all you want to be doing is taking off enough to make yourself comfortable. So if you imagine pumping, you just pump, and then if you think, oh no, that feels better, I'm comfortable again now, that's it, don't do any more. And that will be fine. If you feel that it's coming, you think, oh no, it's really coming, I can really feel it, that fullness, that redness, I feel uncomfortable. So we would be suggesting good pumping and ibuprofen. So getting that milk removed, and remove that milk. And if your baby does a good job, the first thing you do is get the baby on the breast. So it's milk removal will keep and protect you from mastitis. Sometimes mastitis happens because maybe the baby's gone a bit longer. I know this wasn't for you because you've got it in the initial days and this wouldn't be what happened to you. But in other situations, what happens is sometimes the baby sleeps slightly longer at night and the mother suddenly wakes up and thinks, oh my word, I feel so full. And mastitis can happen very quickly. It could be that you've laid in a funny way, that something's been, maybe your bra strap's been up against you. If you've got an older child and they've given you a bump on the breast, that can cause it too. There are lots of reasons that you can end up with a blocked duct or mastitis, but the key to it is milk removal and ibuprofen, as long as you can take it, because it's the best anti-inflammatory you can take. So it's a really, really good anti-inflammatory. So anti-inflammatories, keep the milk moving, use your baby and use a pump. So keep it going. Hopefully it won't happen again for you, Karis, because it is pretty horrible. Harriet has gone, thank you. Can I try and see if I can begin breastfeeding again? She's currently 6 days old, was born at 35 plus 2. So she's very small and finds it difficult to open mouth enough. I'm trying not to. Bear with me because I've got to find the rest of your question. Oh, sorry, I put something else up. Very small, finds it difficult to open her mouth wide enough. I'm trying not to give her formula, but currently would be pumping for hours each day. You could definitely try her back at the breast. Absolutely. With that. So she's now, so she's coming up, she's just over term then, isn't she? I know our breastfeeding clinics are really full at the moment. I know we're booking into beyond next week, but why don't you get in touch and see if you can get yourself booked into clinic and come and see us and see if we can help you get her back to the breast, because your life would be a lot easier if she were breastfeeding, Harriet. You'll find that you're spending so much less time in the day feeding, because you'll be feeding her at the breast. So perhaps go give them a call. They'll Naomi will be around at the moment. Give them a call and see if you can get yourself booked into clinic. It won't be next week, it'll be the week after. And we can give you a hand to get her back to the breast, and probably give you some more support with pumping and keeping it going, and hopefully making it a bit more manageable, because it is really hard work, I know, when you're doing that. So give us a shout, Harriet. Marta's come back. Thank you very much. Should I start to use Lanolin at the same time as starting to collect Clostrum? You would only use Lanolin or any of the nipple creams if you need to. So not everybody will need to use it. Usually people use it because they've become a bit sore. It might, and that's often to do with actually how the baby's gone on. So we know that the majority of problems are to do with positioning and attachment. We've talked about this on these sessions a lot. Because as I've said to you before, how a baby goes on the breast makes a huge difference to what's happening. And if you imagine this is the baby's mouth and my thumb is the nipple on the breast, when a baby goes on, what we want them to do is go on with their upper lip, skimming the nipple, and take the nipple to the back of the mouth where the soft palate is and not the hard palate. If the nipple goes into the middle of the mouth, you've got a hard palate here and a rasping tongue, and that's what happens to your nipple, and your nipple doesn't want that. Your areola can cope, so that's why the nipple needs to be right back here. And that's what's happening. The areola can cope with it. So that's when we would end up with people with sore nipples, and we would normally need to think about using Lanolin or any of the nipple creams that are out there and available. I would suggest to mums, think about treating your nipples like your lips. Don't let them dry out. Most women will put something on their lips every day, and think about the same. So if your nipples are getting dry and cracked, then keep them lubricated and put something on them. So don't let them dry out. What happens is if you've been damaged, so let's say you've been having a few problems with positioning attachment, you've got damaged nipples, they crack, or they get scabs on them. Every time the baby goes back on, if you're not keeping them moist, although the scabs reopen and you don't ever heal, which is not great. So it's thinking about keep your nipples moist, but also get help, because if you're sore because of positioning and attachment, someone needs to give you a hand, someone needs to watch what you're doing. And I know we've talked about it on these sessions before, and we've used these pictures so many times, and you'll see them lots because we love them, because they are such good pictures. And I'm going to hold them up. So you've got these pictures, so you can see that we always suggest that you start nose to nipple, so you can see that baby's in line with the nipple. And then the baby's then held in such a way the head can tip back and they end up with upper lip, just skimming the nipple, as I just said. And if you look at this one, this is even more accentuated. So this one, you can see the nipple is right at the top of the mouth. And the reason for that is because the tongue is here. So if you could see into this baby's mouth, the tongue would be here. So it drops, it gets a mound of, the little mound of the tongue, and then it comes down towards the lips. And if the nipple goes in the middle, it hits the tongue and it can't go any further. But if it goes at the top, like here, it goes over the top of the tongue and to the back of the mouth, right back here. And if it doesn't do that, that's why people end up sore. In some instances, it does do that, and a mother is still sore. And that's when I was talking about Catherine right at the beginning, when she mentioned that she had a high arched palate. So a high arched palate means that this baby has got, rather than having a flat arch here, it's right up here. If you imagine, it's much higher. So when the baby goes on to the breast, when the baby takes the breast into its mouth, the nipple still doesn't go far enough back. And we've got ways and means that we can try and help that baby take a bit more and flip it to the back of the mouth. So you might hear someone talk about the flipple or tipping the nipple, and that's what we would suggest with someone who's got a high arch palate like Catherine's baby had. So it's going back to thinking about positioning and attachment is absolutely crucial. So in those instances you'd be thinking about using a nipple cream if you were sore or damaged, but you probably wouldn't need to use it otherwise. Many women, if things go well for them, they will never use a nipple cream, never have to. But, so Karis come back and said thanks very much, and Harriet's come back and said thank you for the help, and she appreciates the time, and she'll give us a call, which is great. So you can say to Naomi that you've just been told to, and she'll try and book you in as early as possible. Let's get your baby back to the breast, Harriet, because you'll find life so much nicer, much easier. So no more questions at the moment. I see quite a few still watching, so think about any more questions you want to ask. We'll just keep an eye on the time. So we've got about another 20 minutes if need be. Hello Imogen, nice to see you. Sorry I didn't see you today. She's just put up a smiley face. I was meant to see her in clinic today, but I think Naomi's seen her instead, which is great. And I hope Leo's doing really well. It's lovely to see all our familiar faces on here. It's so nice because a lot of the same names come up and again, and it's nice to think that we're able to give you this support in these difficult times. So yeah, make the most of it. As I mentioned earlier, we've got Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support are doing an amazing job. They adapted to this, these changes in the ways of giving support in such a good way. We've got the Abingdon Baby Cafe as well. There's Sue Richards there. She's fantastic. She's they're all lactation consultants. They've all got amazing skills. And there's the La Leche League as well. And I think, organisations like the La Leche League are offering, mother-to-mother support, and they're offering that slightly more communal support as well. They do online groups, which is really lovely, which I think a lot of you will be missing out on. It's so difficult to have a baby in a time when you can't go and spend time with other mothers. And it's so important because, we know so many things that you'll come across in your day-to-day experiences as new mothers are really normal, but because you've never been there, you've not been in that situation before, it's nice to have someone to bounce it off and go, this happened to me, is that normal? And that's the whole premise of the baby cafes. They were set up exactly for that, so there could be peer, mother to mother peer support, so that they could talk to each other and say, and see someone who's maybe just 2 weeks ahead of them and go, my goodness, you look really good, you've obviously had a night's sleep or a part night's sleep, and then we can put people together and support them. So there have been a few more questions coming through, and Imi said she did see Naomi and she is lovely. I totally agree, she's fabulous. Oh, I don't know if I've done to my picture again. Bear with me, I've done it again. I can see that it's not working. I've touched something on the camera. Sorry, apologies everybody. Oh, I've touched something. Let me just go back and see what I've, oops. No, sorry about this. I can see the questions, but I can't see what I've done. So bear with me. I can't see what. No. Sorry about this, folks. I'm just going to go get some support, tech support. How do I get the screen back on? Is the camera still on? What's happened to the camera? Done it. Apologies about that. I managed to flip the camera. Sorry about that, folks. That's the first time I've done that in ages. Sorry about that. Right, let's go back and see what the questions were. I don't know how it's. This is because I'm not being able to do this on my laptop as well. Right. Let's have a look and see what I've missed. So bear with me. We've got such a good system going when Amy and I do it together. It works much simpler than this. Let's just see where I got to. Right, so Caris has said, when my baby feeds for long periods of time, 30 minutes each breast, for example, should I interrupt her to wean her or wait until she comes off? Wait. The reason for that is that you're not feeding with a bottle, you're feeding with the breast. You don't have air in your breast. So she's going to dictate how long she wants to spend at the breast. So don't worry, leave her there. Let her take that time to do what she wants to do. 30 minutes is quite normal. Anywhere between 5 and 40 minutes is a normal breastfeed. So 30 minutes is really quite normal, Caris. So don't worry about that, but don't take her off to winter. She may have a bit of wind, but the likelihood is that's because she may have cried before she went on, or maybe she struggled initially when she went on with the latch. But usually there isn't any wind because they're not taking air in at the breast. It's not a receptacle that's got air in it like a bottle does. So keep going with what you're doing. You're doing a great job. So just thinking about not doing that. I'm going to try not to flip the screen again. That's my fault. I touched it earlier. As I say, my laptop's not decided to work today. Rita's come on and said, if I get any issues with breastfeeding, who should I contact first? When would I contact your team? Thanks. Right, as I mentioned at the top of the programme, that we have some fantastic student midwives coming through, and obviously we then therefore have fantastic midwives. So the first person you would contact for help with feeding will be your community midwife. So someone in the community midwifery team, it might be the midwives themselves, it might be one of the MSWs, they will be the ones that will come and help you. So in the first instances, it would be your midwives. If you're in the hospital, it would be the midwives working on the wards and the MSWs working on the wards, and they all have fabulous skills. Once you're home then, community, and then if you're after 10 days and you've been discharged, your health visitor team. Now, if those problems can't be resolved, if it's going on and it's not getting better, that's when you would contact us. So we're here to be the ones that sort of pick up the pieces when things haven't gone quite right. So when you've had a plan put in place by the community midwives, it hasn't worked, we would then get involved. You can always call us and have a chat with us. We'll talk to anybody on the phone, but we will triage everyone who phones and work out whether we're the right people to be seen, or whether we're going to signpost you to Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, back to your community midwife or MSW, or book you into clinic. So by all means, give us a shout, talk through what's going on, and we can make a plan from there. But as I say, first instance would be community midwives. And the thing is, that ties in with them coming to visit you at home as well, because that saves you having to go out. So there's so much support for you out there. I know you may not feel it at the moment, but there is plenty of support out there for you at the moment. So I hope you feel reassured, Rita. You're not going to be on your own, I promise. Right, so Amy's asked, how long can you freeze breast milk for? 6 months. So when I'm teaching staff and students, I always say 6, 5, 6 is the way I remember it. It's my easiest way of remembering it. I like things like that. So you can have breast milk at room temperature for 6 hours. It can then go in the fridge for 5 days. It can then go into a deep freeze for 6 months. So that's where I get my 656 from. If it's colostrum, it's got even more protective properties. So the end result of that is that actually you can keep it on the side for 24 hours. But with any of it, colostrum, your own milk, the best place for it is always the baby. Get it in the baby. That's the best place for it. So Amy, so 24 hours room temperature for colostrum. And then colostrum, and then mature milk 6 hours at room temperature, and then either of them 5 days in the fridge, 6 months in the freezer. Okay, hopefully that helps. Sylvia's come through. She's 34 weeks and 3 days and no sign of colostrum or breast enlargement at all. Is it too early for that? Thank you. We would expect you during pregnancy to have noticed you got a little bit bigger and you got a little bit more tender. That's what we tend to ask when we talk to mums about did they have any breast changes. We'd always say, we're not looking for radical breast changes. You don't have to go up lots of cup sizes. I know some women do, but most women don't. So just thinking about just a bit more tender, and many women will say, oh, I was really tender at the beginning, and maybe just a little bit bigger is all we're looking for. Not all women leak, so it's not an indication of you having problems going forward. There are certain risk factors we know. We know that the women who have got polycystic ovaries, PCOS, might have more of an issue. Women who have not had breast, didn't really develop in adolescence quite as they would have expected, don't look quite like other women, may have more problems. But we would always assume everyone's going to produce milk unless proven otherwise. So I wouldn't worry at this stage. If you have got any concerns, then my phone, if you have got any concerns, then just give us a call, Sylvia, and we can talk it through. I'm sorry, I'm doing a very rubbish job of doing this on the phone here today. Karis has come back and said thank you. Rita said thank you as well. Let's see what else we've got. If we've got any more questions there. Sarah has said, can I try breastfeeding again at 4 weeks after birth? I still have milk being produced. You can definitely try. We would always say give it a go. Even, I don't know, if you're formula feeding your baby at other times, but even if it's just for the comfort, if you can get your baby back to the breasts, you might want to just try some skin-to-skin contact. Get your baby in that position. Not when they're hungry. Do it when they're not looking for food, because that you'll get better results at that point in time. If you imagine your baby's not been used to having food from the breast for that period, for a period of time, you just want them to think the breast is a nice place to be. And we have heard of babies older than this attach when they're having never attached before. If you wanted to produce more milk, you might want to be thinking about seeing how, if you can get the baby back to the breast, and if you can, fantastic, or pumping and then trying again with getting the baby back to the breast. But we would say give it a try, even if you are giving other milk as well. Any time at the breast is beneficial, and any breast milk is beneficial. But it's not just about the milk. It's about that closeness and comfort, and that that relationship you've got, the two of you together, is all fantastic. That breastfeeding is irreplaceable in that respect. So Sarah, if you're up for giving it a go, people like La Leche might be a really good organisation to have a chat with. They are fabulous, and can have a chat with them, or even OBS and us if need be. So Sarah, reach out, go and speak to some of those people and see if they can give you a hand. And definitely don't think you can't. It would be brilliant. Amy's come back and said thank you. Karis has come. Let me just see what Karis has said. Another question. She says, sorry, another question. No sorries needed. It's lovely. Otherwise I'd be talking to myself, having to think of things to say. How much milk is normal for baby to bring up while winding? It varies so much. Some babies never bring any up. Some bring up loads. As long as your baby's growing and meeting all their milestones, we wouldn't be too worried. And we do have some babies that bring quite considerable amounts up, not at every feed. So just, an amount, that I can't put a figure on it really, but as long as your baby's growing and happy and everything, and you're coping, then if they're bringing some up, we wouldn't normally be worried, unless it was constantly every feed, most of the feed, affecting weight gain. It can, although it's really tough when babies are very sicky, because it can be a real issue of constantly changing clothes. hopefully it's something that will get better over time. If it is causing you a big problem, then seek some support, Caris. I can't remember how old your baby is, but either community midwives, health visitor, or us if need be. So to see how you get on, but there isn't. I can't put a volume on it, but it's whether it's impacting or feeding, whether it's really causing you a big problem. But it's not uncommon for babies to bring some up. Right, so Sylvia's got something here as well. Oh, Sylvia said, I'm great, thank you. Well, even though I keep flipping the screen, I've not done a great job in that respect. Okay, Sarah, yes, I thought that probably would be the case. So Sarah said she's formula feeding at the moment. And oh, brilliant, and you're pumping. That's fabulous. So that's how you'll get your milk supply back up again if you want to do it. And, even if you do a formula feed first, and put your baby to the breast afterwards, and just for that closeness and comfort and a bit of breast milk, that would be fabulous. There's still benefit in doing that for you, for them. It really is important, that lovely time. And it is something that is so unique for mother and baby. No one else is going to do it. And when I talk to mums about going back to work, if they can manage it, if they're doing the sort of job where they can keep some breastfeeding going, it's so lovely, because it's hard when you've had a baby and you've looked after your baby, and in the UK it's usually for 6 months before you're going back to work, or even a year, to hand that baby over to someone else and feel someone else can do your job. But actually, if you keep breastfeeding going, no one else can do that for you, or no one else will do that one for you. So that keeps that very, very special relationship going. So if mums, when they're going back to work, and if you're thinking about going back to work, for many mums, they can combine carrying on feeding and being back at work, even if it's just a morning and a night feed, and it's so beneficial for you and your babies. Karis said 3 weeks on Saturday, thank you. Doesn't tend to be every feed, and she's putting on weight quickly, thankfully, so don't think it's affecting her. She's a real foodie, but thought I'd ask. Well, hopefully you're reassured then, Karis. That sounds like you're doing a great job if she's gaining weight quickly. That's lovely. And well, I think they love it. You say she's a real foodie. Babies love to be fed. They absolutely love it. And if Naomi were here, she'd be talking about oral satisfaction. It is so much more than just food. It's that time, as we've just mentioned before, about getting that baby back, Sarah's baby back to the breast. It's so much more than just food. It's that period, that time of closeness and comfort that you cannot replace. And remember, take home message of today is you cannot overfeed a breastfed baby, and you cannot spoil any baby. No baby can be spoiled. Babies are there to be loved and hugged. And that's what they want, and that's what they need, and you cannot spoil them. And I know in our culture in the past we've talked about making, we hear it, making a rod for your own back, don't you ever put that baby down. Well, actually that's not what babies expect. Babies are born expecting to be hugged and loved and kept close, and that's why slings are so helpful, and getting babies back to the breast is so wonderful. So Steffi's come up for 2 weeks now. Our 8-week-old seems to be grazing at night, waking every 30 to 90 minutes, seemingly to feed for just a few minutes, then falls back to sleep and won't feed anymore, even if woken up. And keep doing this. Even if woken up with an appetite, anything I can do to get him to take a full feed. He's a big boy and plenty of wet and dirty nappies. Oh, Steffi, I think this came up a while ago, didn't it? A week or so ago. Oh, you poor laugh. That is really hard. Because that's really interrupting your night, isn't it? Especially when they're not feeding. You don't mind if they feed, but if they don't feed, that's so tough. It sounds like your baby's checking in on you. It sounds like they're just making sure you're there, which is all part of it, obviously, but 30 to 90 minutes throughout the night sounds really, really tough. I'm not really sure. I mean, you're doing it already. You're doing exactly what I would have suggested, which would be to do a nappy change, rouse them, try and get them to take a feed. I can only hope that it's a phase, that your baby's going to go through it. I'm struggling to think what to suggest to you, really. Having the baby close. I don't know if you've got a next to me cot. If you can just try and pat them so they go back to sleep, so they don't wake. I would love to give you more suggestions, Steffi, but off the top of my head right now, I can't think of any more other than what you've already tried, which is to try and rouse them a bit more and see how they get on. It sounds like your baby just wants to make sure you're there. The only other thing to think about is just, offering up more feeds in the day to see if that, because we know with a 24-hour period, a baby takes a finite amount of milk. For instance, we expect a mother to be producing on average 750 mils by the time you've got to your baby's age. Some will produce more, some will produce less. And if you think of that, that's what the baby would be taking on, is whether you can try and persuade them to take a little bit more a bit earlier in the day and help them last through the night. Because we know that babies that sleep really well at night will feed tons in the day, and vice versa. So maybe trying to fit another feed in the day, see if you can persuade him to take a little bit more at another time in the day and see if that works. And carrying on with what you're doing and hoping it's a phase that will pass. Other than that, Steffi, I'm afraid I really can't think of anything else to suggest. It sounds like you're doing an amazing job, because you say he's a big boy and plenty of wet and dirty nappies. So you're obviously growing a really lovely baby, and hopefully he'll start realising that he'd like a little bit more sleep too. So I'll leave you with that then. And I mean, obviously at 8 weeks, why don't you bounce it off your health visitors as well and see what they suggest? I mean, the thing that's we don't really recommend anymore, and I know it's been recommended in the past, is crying out. That leaving babies to cry. We know that isn't good for babies, because their cortisol levels go through the roof, and the mother's cortisol, although when the baby does eventually go to sleep, it's extremely distressing for mums to listen to. It's the most horrendous thing is to hear your baby cry and not respond to it. But we know then when the mother goes to sleep, research has shown that the mother's cortisol levels drop beautifully, and then but the baby's cortisol levels do not. They stay high. So the crying it out or leaving babies to cry is not the answer. So much as it's really tough for you at the moment, Steffi, I wouldn't be recommending that. So yeah, I can see you're saying you hope it's a phase 2. You just brought it next to me. Oh, brilliant. I think that's a great idea. Let's hope that works, because he'll know you're right there next to him, and then hopefully he'll go, oh yeah, my mum's here, I can go back to sleep now. So good luck with that, Steffi. I hope it works and things get a bit better for you. So I'm going to check what the time is. We're at 26 minutes past, so we've nearly done an hour with a few little breaks of my making, because I was a bit technically bad there. So any other questions before we sign off? And otherwise, hopefully it'll be again next week, depending on, it might be from me from home again next week, or it might be Hannah and Naomi. But have a think about if you've got anything else. So I think we've covered a fair few things today. I've talked about how well trained our staff are. They're there to support you, and that question came up about who will help you. Our staff are fab. We've got fantastic midwives on the wards. We've got fantastic maternity support workers. The staff and community are absolutely so dedicated, and they'll support you as well. If you've got your health visitor team, Oxford Breastfeeding Support, Abingdon Baby Cafe, La Leche League, all there to support you. And if you still need more support, we're here as well to give you a hand. So we can be reached by phone, by email. All our contact details are on the OUH webpage. So if you go onto the hospital webpage, look at maternity, and then you'll find a section called feeding, and that's us. And all our details are there, as well as some resources and things that may help things make better, help with any questions you have. Karis come back, so thank you very much, and thanks for the support. Oh, we're lucky to have all of you put in the questions, so it would be very boring otherwise. It's quite nice. It just feels like a nice chat with people asking questions. It doesn't feel too bad. But anyway, I think I'm about to sign off then, so it's 27 minutes past. Thank you very much to all of you that have been watching. Apologies for my technical problems, and good luck, Sarah. I can see you've come back, and get in touch and we'll see what we can do to help you. Until next week. That will be our 27th. Can't believe we've done so many. And thanks to the Oxfordshire Maternity Voices Partnership for facilitating this. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye.